Finally, the moment that everybody had been waiting on had happened. Zach Edey was back, but then he was hurt again. And now it begs the question, should Zach Edey even play for the rest of Summer League for the Memphis Grizzlies? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Going solo today as Joe Molinax gets a well-deserved day off. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today, because we got a lot to talk about on today's show. But before we get into all that, remember that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. As we alluded to in the opening of today's show, we got to talk about Zach Edey's return for a quarter and a half or whatever it was. But there's a lot more to talk about in today's show as well. In the second segment, we want to talk about G.G. Jackson, another big performance from him. And me and Joe kind of challenged him in an area of his game, and I think he showed us. He showed us something. And we'll talk about that in the second segment. Then in the last segment, we're going to preview what this weekend will look like for the Memphis Grizzlies. But with all that being said, let's get into the Zach Edey talk, because we saw it before the game. The big 7'4" big man came running out on the court in this warm-ups, which was an indication that he was going to play. It was an indication that he was going to play. And shortly later, it was reported Zach Edey was making his return after missing 5 games. He comes out, he plays a quarter of basketball, comes in the second quarter. Then he goes for a block shot, fouls a guy, and then as he's coming down, rolls his right ankle. And if you were watching the game live, you heard the frustration from him. You know, he basically, he said some words that I can't say on our family-friendly show, but he basically said that I just want to play. And if you didn't feel for him in that moment, I mean, you had to feel for him, because we're talking about a guy in Zach Edey, played 138 out of 139 games in college. 138 games out of 139. He missed 1 game at Purdue. The only time he missed a game at Purdue was a non-COVID illness in the 2022-23 season. It's the only time he ever missed a game. Outside of that, this guy was durable. He played 39 games last year for Purdue. And not only did he play 39 games, he's playing way more minutes than the typical centers. So you're talking about one of the most durable players in the draft. Then boom, left ankle soreness. Misses 5 games in Summer League. Comes back. Looks impressive. We'll get to how he looked in a second. But looks impressive. And then suffers the right ankle injury. Now, before we get to the injury, we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But how did he look in his short time? I thought he looked fine. I mean, quite to be honest with you, he looked good. And in that first quarter, he only played 6 minutes in the first quarter. And the Grizzlies, you could tell, especially Jake LaRavia. Like, Jake LaRavia was feeding him the basketball. Jake LaRavia was another guy who didn't finish the game due to an injury. But we'll say that. We'll get more to that later. But Jake LaRavia was feeding him the basketball. Edey scored the Grizzlies' first 2 points of the game after, a failed post entry. And there was there was a couple mishaps with the post entries to him. But you saw in this game, the Grizzlies were more committed to seeing, okay, he has the advantage. I mean, G.G. Jackson drove the basketball, had a nice dump off to Edey. We know Scottie Pippen is going to feed him, but it seemed like everyone was committed to getting the ball to Zach Edey, and that's what you wanted to see more, because even though in that first game in Salt Lake City, he had 14 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks, all that stuff, there were a lot of moments in that game, particularly late in the game, fourth quarter overtime, where it felt like Edey was almost freezed out of the game plan. He wasn't getting the ball unless it was an offensive rebound or something like that. He wasn't really just getting his touches. And that's not what we've become, familiar with seeing with Zach Edey, because you go look at those Purdue games, I'm telling you, he's touching the ball pretty much every single possession. And that's how it felt in this game. It's a shame that we didn't get to see more of it, because that's how it felt. When Zach Edey was on the floor, the Grizzlies said, we're going to get him the ball and we're going to play through him. And he had an interview. I think Zach Edey said in his interview that the difference between Purdue and the Grizzlies is now, he's going to be playing more off of guys as opposed to, them playing off of him. Like at Purdue, they played through him. He's not expecting the Grizzlies to play through him as much, which is probably going to be the case because you got John Morant, Desmond Bane, and etc. But the Grizzlies are still going to play through Zach Edey some. Like the ball is going to touch the paint, and there are going to be plays that are dictated based off of how defenses defend Zach Edey. But pretty much played 6 minutes in the first quarter. Comes in the second quarter, plays 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, didn't take a shot, got a couple rebounds, and pretty much really didn't get a chance to do much. He got hurt, rolled his ankle. The Grizzlies, I think it was like 3 minutes left in the second quarter when the injury happened. The Grizzlies shortly later, around halftime, ruled him out for the remainder of the game. And now based off what we've seen, based off what we know where the Grizzlies are as well, because the Grizzlies are now 4-0 in summer league play and pretty much primed to be in a semifinal game this weekend. So with all that being said, it begs the question, the only remaining question, should Zach Edey play in another summer league game for the Memphis Grizzlies this year? And I got a short and simple answer for this one. No. If you've been listening to Locked On Grizzlies for the last few days, shout out to our everydayers out there. The everydayers have heard me say, like, in that first game in Salt Lake City, and this isn't a common opinion, this isn't what everybody probably wants to hear, but personally, I saw enough. Everything that I wanted to see out of Zach Edey in Summer League, I saw it in that one game. I didn't care if he played another game. Sure, from an entertainment standpoint, it'd be nice to have him out there, but you didn't need him out there. And that's been proven. I mean, I said it before the Vegas games even started. You don't need him to win this thing. And now they're 4-0 pretty much without him the entire time, outside of, 8 minutes. So Zach Edey, shut him down. It's a wrap. Don't need him for this. We've seen the physicality. We've seen the rim protection. I mean, in this game, I think he only had one block, but he altered. I mean, you just seen guys getting, guys were cutting to the basket, had a couple backdoor situations, and if Zach Edey wasn't at the rim, they would probably challenge the big or shot a floater or something. But with him at the basket, they just dribble the ball out or they throw it out back to the three-point line and reset. And that's just that's the difference maker where the stat sheet doesn't, there isn't a stat for, stopping the offense from attempting a shot when they enter the paint. But Zach Edey was doing just that. Like, his presence is a present in itself. With all that being said, though, shut him down. I don't even care if it's not a serious, even if it's just, he did walk off under his own power, which is an indication that he's probably going to be just fine. The Grizzlies do have something to play for, the Summer League championship and all those things, but how much does that really matter to the big long-term goals of this team? This is a guy who's probably going to be a starter. If he's not starting, he's going to play a lot of impactful minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies. You do not need him playing Summer League games when you've already won 3 of the 4 games in Las Vegas by double digits. Like, the Grizzlies aren't just surviving games without Zach Edey. They're boat racing teams. This game against the Pelicans, Zach Edey went out. It was a really tight game, and they were tied up at halftime. Third quarter, Grizzlies going a 10-2 run. Pelicans make it a little bit closer, get within 5. No problem. Grizzlies go an 11-0 run in the fourth quarter. Like, they are boat racing teams. This was an 11-point win. The previous game was a 6-point win where they also had a big lead in that game. And then the other 2 games were 20-point wins. So it's been proven you don't need him to win this thing. Scottie Pippen Jr., G.G. Jackson, those guys leading the way and other guys chipping in. You have enough. But it would be fun to see Zach Edey. And quite frankly, it kind of sucks because this is the stuff where I understand when Grizzlies fans say it's just our luck. This guy played 138 of 139 games at Purdue. And let's debunk something real fast because, people always have their theories about how the Grizzlies handled injuries and things like that. As I said earlier, I kind of just, threw it in there in the conversation, but I didn't make it the main point. One was a right ankle soreness. The other is the left ankle. 2 completely different ankles. These are not related. This is not a situation where, the Grizzlies rushed him back and, he turned the same ankle and re-aggravated something. That is not the case in this situation. This is just unfortunate luck. Unfortunate luck. He's falling down on the player and twists his ankle and leaves the game. And the Grizzlies aren't putting him back in the game in that situation. He's too important, and he's shown enough. I mean, in this game, he was dominant in the little bit that we saw him. And in his first game in Salt Lake City, he was dominant in that one as well. So, look, that's where I stand on the Zach Edey thing. Let me know what you guys think as well. Do you think Zach Edey should come back and help the Grizzlies pursue a Summer League championship? Or do you say, nah, sit the big man out. We've seen enough. Let me know what you guys think here. But coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to switch tones. We're going to talk about a guy who's probably been one of the Grizzlies' best players in Summer League so far, and that's GG Jackson. We're going to talk about something that he did in this game that he's never done in an NBA game before. But before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Look, listen up. I love sports, and I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But the playoffs have winded down, and we're getting fewer games, and the WNBA is about to go on break as well, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com right now and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All you got to do right now is visit FanDuel.com, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about GG Jackson. He did something that he's never done in an NBA game before. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for tuning in with us on today's show as we continue to talk all things Grizzlies. Remember to like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, and whether you're watching it on YouTube, make sure you continue to tune in as well on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the platforms that you can check out Locked On Grizzlies. Appreciate you guys for tuning in with us as well. But in the first segment, we talked about Zach Edey, important Grizzlies player to the future. Now we're going to talk about another guy who's an important piece to the future. And if you tuned in to yesterday's show, you saw GG Jackson had 27 points. He had 13 rebounds. But then you saw me and Joe Mullinax, more joking. Joe's more the rah-rah. Joe gonna give you more of the rah-rah. I'm more of the, I'm the calm, cool, collected a little bit more. But we had the same point. We were making the same point. GG Jackson, he's gotta show us something as a playmaker offensively, because he had 27 points, 13 rebounds, and 0 assists. And when I say as an offensive playmaker, I'm more talking about getting other players involved, because that's winning basketball at the end of the day. That's a separator, when you can elevate your teammates while elevating, yourself from a statistical standpoint, which he's proven he can do for himself. So that was something that I outlined at the very beginning of Summer League. I wanted to see GG Jackson work on his playmaking. We saw Desmond Bane work on it. It worked. We saw the Grizzlies work on it with Zaire Williams. Hasn't worked as well. They emphasized it. Didn't work as well. So it's not a guarantee that, just because the Grizzlies say, yeah, we want GG Jackson to be a better playmaker, that boom, all of a sudden he's going to come out averaging 5 assists next year. It's not a certainty. It is something that is important to watch, because this is a crucial developmental stage for what GG Jackson can be and what he will be. And throughout Summer League so far, it's been underwhelming. Haven't seen enough. 0 assists, 2 assists, 1 assist, 0 assists through 3 quarters, then gets a couple assists mixed in. But that was not the case on Thursday. None of it was the case on Thursday. I mentioned it earlier. GG Jackson drove to the basket in the first quarter, one of his first passes of the game and his first assist of the game. Draw 2 defenders. Draw Zach Edey's defender over to him. Because look, GG's 6'9". Like, if he beats his guy off the dribble and you don't come help, it's 2 points. But he drew both defenders over there and did a nice wraparound dump off pass to Zach Edey. Zach Edey dunked it in, wide open dunk, easy finish. And immediately when I saw that, you know what came to mind for me? The very first Summer League game in Salt Lake City. GG had a very similar situation where he drove to the basket. I think he drove on his left. He drove on the left side in this situation, but he drove to the basket, wrapped a little dump off pass to Zach Edey, and Edey put it up and finished it after the defender had came over to help on GG Jackson. Maybe he just needed a larger target. Maybe it takes a 7'4" guy to come out there and help GG out. But on a serious note, Zach Edey went down and GG kept facilitating. I mean, he had a transition pass where he grabbed the board, he pushed the ball in transition, and he zoomed it up the floor, like through the teeth of the defense in between defenders. And I saw that pass and I said, man, GG, don't you do it to these people. Don't you do that to these people, because everybody's waiting on this. This is the developmental stage now with GG Jackson. The scoring, I'm not worried about. You show me an NBA defender, and I'll show you a 6'9" guy with some wiggle, who has the Euro step, who has a step back, who has a fadeaway, who has a spot up shot. He can score on anybody. Now, he can't score efficiently on anybody yet. That's going to have to come in time. But you give GG Jackson a basketball and say, go give me a bucket. You give him a few times against anybody in the league, he going to get the job done. But the defense, he's also shown the progression there as well. The Grizzlies are challenging him and all that. But then there's the playmaking, right? So seeing him get 6 assists, because that's how many he finished with in his summer league game. This was important. He's got to build on it, but it was important. Because if you go back to the regular season, you know the most assists GG Jackson had in a regular season game when he averaged 1.2 assists per game for the Grizzlies? The most assists that he had was 4. All those great numbers we saw GG Jackson put up. 44 points in the NBA game. The youngest to score over 25 points coming off the bench, surpassing the late, great Kobe Bryant. All these great scoring numbers that we saw GG Jackson put up. The made three-pointers of Grizzlies rookies and things like that. All these great numbers. And guess what? At the end of the day, he wasn't diamond. And it was important to talk about this because, you know, I had someone on X ask me. Basically, someone said, I see GG Jackson being a 6-man, talking about year 2 GG Jackson. I see GG Jackson being a 6-man of the year and most improved candidate in his second season. And he said, paraphrasing, because I don't know the exact words, but he basically said, he was like, do you see the same thing for him? And I cautioned a little bit. I didn't agree because I said, no, not yet. The third season, the third year is when I expect those impact stats to go up for GG Jackson. What I'm talking about when I say impact stats, that's when I expect him to be able to consistently drive to the cup, make that skip pass. Oh, yeah, I know exactly where the defense is coming from. And the adjustment to playing alongside of the guys. Right now, GG looks like the guy, and he should. And when he's coming off the bench he's going to look like the guy in some of those situations when Ja Dez is not on the floor, and he should. But it's going to be a little different when you got Ja, Dez, and Jaren on the floor. And GG, you're probably a fourth option in that situation. So it's going to be more spot-up shots. It's going to be more quick decisions. You know, the Grizzlies like to play that 0.5 offense. They don't want you hogging the ball and dribble. It's catch the ball, look left, look right, make a decision, or you're going to drive to the cup or you're going to pass it. And boom, keep the ball moving. So it's going to be a little bit different. Whereas late in the season, we saw GG Jackson make a lot of terrific plays. But the basketball analyst in me, like the game within the game, when you look deeper into the game, a lot of the things that GG was doing wasn't really conducive to winning games. And when I say that, don't get me wrong, GG Jackson's going to help the Grizzlies win a lot of games. I'm just saying that, you know, he would drive in double teams and stuff like that, and nobody would care because, you know, no offense to, you know, some of the guys who were on 10-day contracts and whatnot, but it wasn't Desmond Bane. It wasn't Luke Kennard standing in those corners. Whereas now if he does some of those things, it's GG, why did you do that? And Luke Kennard was wide open in the corner. Why did you do that? And Desmond Bane was wide open. Why did you do that? And John Morant was calling for the basketball. It's a little bit different now. It'll be a little bit different in that scenario. But GG Jackson in this game showed me something as a playmaker. He showed he can do it. Now he has to consistently do it. These next few games, how many games the Grizzlies have left in the Summer League, will be important to see how GG Jackson continues to progress as a playmaker. Because we want to see it. Joe Molinax, my co-host, he wants to see it. I want to see it. And it's an important developmental point for the Grizzlies as they get to that next level. They need Gigi Jackson to be more of an all-around player, and that's going to be the key to Memphis getting to the next level. Speaking of getting to the next level, the Grizzlies went 4-0 in summer league play. Now, what's next for them? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting and that, as my grandma would say, the hooping and hollering? Well, make the switch over to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that hollering. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, let's get into it. We got to talk about the Grizzlies' upcoming stretch. They got a stretch here where they have a chance to win this thing. Stay tuned for the conversation on that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I'm Damichael Cole, co-host here on Locked On Grizzlies, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal as well. Recapping today's show, we talked about a lot. We talked about Zach Edey's short-lived return. He came, he left. We talked about Gigi Jackson passing the basketball, what it means for the Grizzlies, and we talked about, just pretty much his playmaking progress and the process he needs to have. But lastly, in today's show, we're going to recap what the Grizzlies have done so far and pretty much what's next. Some of you might have been around in 2019, but I know there are a lot of Grizzlies fans that are newer on the scene, whether it's because of Zach Edey, whether it's because when Ja just went to a whole nother level, and it was like, oh, this is a fun team to follow after the 56-win season and all that. Whatever the case may be, whatever player has brought you in or just get into basketball. The Grizzlies have kind of become a fun team to watch over the last few years, and some people may need to be a little bit more familiarized on the Summer League rules and what's happening here. So the Grizzlies are 4-0 in Summer League play. At the time of this recording, the last game of the night, which was the Clippers game, because there are four teams still competing with the Grizzlies for the top 4 spots. So 4 teams get into the semifinals, and basically there are 5 teams competing for those spots. The Grizzlies are in a great spot, as I said earlier in the show, and quite frankly, the Grizzlies are going to get in. Right now, we're just everything but formally, and that's at the recording of this show, because more than likely, by the time you watch this show, the Grizzlies will have clinched their position in the Summer League semifinals. But if they haven't, we'll talk about the process that needs to happen on today for that to happen. So basically, the Clippers played, last night, but at the time of this recording, they had not just played their game. But in that game, the Clippers needed to beat Utah by more than 24 points in order to win the point differential there. I'm pretty sure that's probably not going to happen. But if it does, if they do end up blowing them out and you watch this and say, oh, what happened? Then the Spurs, who right now are in the 5th spot, because the Grizzlies were ended the night in the top spot, the Spurs would need to win their game by 44 points to knock the Grizzlies out. Because you got the Spurs, the Heat, Golden State, the Clippers. All that's not going to happen. So with all that being said, now we're going to talk about it from the perspective of the Grizzlies being in the Summer League semifinal. We will not know who the Grizzlies will play until after today's slate of games. Again, the 3 teams to monitor: the Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors, and the San Antonio Spurs. The Miami Heat going today with a 15.7 point differential. Golden State Warriors 12.7. So Miami is right along pretty much the lines of the Grizzlies. I think they just have to win their game by, I think it's 10 points. If they win by 10 or more points, they maintain the 1 seed. But if they win by 8, I think it is, the Grizzlies will jump to the number 1 seed in the standing. But the Grizzlies are going to play one of those teams, whoever it is. This is Locked On Grizzlies. We're not here to focus on that just yet. We're going to focus more on the Grizzlies side. And from the Grizzlies side, I'm a little concerned. Y'all. And I say that because I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Zach Edey. I don't see the Grizzlies letting him play. After he just, for ankle soreness, missed 5 games, you think they're going to throw him back out there? I mean, anything's possible, but I just don't see it. So you're probably not going to have him. Cam Spencer, that was the one on Monday when he rolled his ankle. That looked like it hurt. I mean, he was visibly in some pain there. He didn't play Wednesday or Thursday. We'll see what happens on that end, but you're potentially looking at a game without those two. Jake LaRavia, he was another player who returned in this game. Jake LaRavia missed the last game, missed the last two games, I think it is. He was also hurt on Monday. Same game as Cam Spencer. Missed Wednesday's game. I'm sorry. He missed Wednesday's game, returned on Thursday. And it was a short return. Only played 7 minutes, left in the first half, did not return. So you're talking about Zach Edey, Cam Spencer, Jake LaRavia, all dealing with injuries. Best case scenario, you have two of them available probably. I highly doubt all three of them just come back out of thin air and play in this game. Highly doubt it. Best case scenario, you have all of them. Realistic and most likely scenario is none of them play. So you want to prepare for that. And the question that I present to you, and the question that I'm going to answer myself is, can the Grizzlies win a Summer League title without Zach Edey, without Cam Spencer, and without Jake LaRavia? Well, as I said all along, everything starts with Scottie Pippen Jr. And he had another terrific game, 16 points, 11 assists, the steals. I mean, his defensive pressure is serious. Like, he said it after the game. He said, I'm the best defender in Summer League. I'm not going to argue with him. I'm not arguing with him based off of what I've seen. Like, this is some real grit and grind. Like, he gets after it. Like, he gets after it on the defensive end. So with all that being said, here's the thing. You're going to have Scottie Pippen Jr., Jalen Wells, who had 15 points, had a decent game, made 3 3-pointers in this game, knocked down 3-point. He took 9, so it's good to see him just confidently taking those shots, and all of them pretty much were good looks. Jalen Wells, you're probably going to have Trey Jemison, who's been an Iron Man for this team. I mean, he's pretty much played every game. When Zach Edey hasn't been available, he's been available for the back-to-backs. He's played 2 back-to-backs. He played a back-to-back in Salt Lake City. Like, Trey Jemison has been an Iron Man. So you're going to have those guys who pretty much you trust, and then G.G. Jackson as well. So you're going to probably rely on Scottie Pippen and G.G. Jackson as your guys to get you over the hump. Your surrounding group is going to be Jalen Wells, it's going to be Trey Jemison. Then there's a next level. That's going to be other key players in your surrounding group. Deke Giroux, he had a big game, 15 points off the bench and quote-unquote off the bench. But when Jake LaRavia went down, Deke Giroux was the guy who stepped up, and he was huge in this second half. He was a big reason why the Grizzlies won that game. He's going to play more minutes, and quite frankly, I like Deke Giroux. I think that he is a guy. Everybody talks about the idea of Scottie Pippen Jr. being upgraded to the 15-man roster. Well, is that if that happens sooner rather than later? Like, if that's something the Grizzlies say, yeah, man, the guy just deserves it. Let's go and give him his money. If they do that, I put Deke Giroux on a 2-way contract. I upgrade him from playing with the hustle down there, put him on a 2-way deal because he can play to me. But with that being said, he becomes a more important player. We talk about how Scottie Pippen Jr. pressures the ball. Have y'all seen Isaiah Miller pressure the ball? I know we saw the dunks. He had the windmill. He had the one he winded back and slammed it in. The 2 dunks he threw down. But he has been a hound defensively too. So it's guys like that you're going to be dependent on. And it's tough to say because Gigi's going to have to cook. But I think the Grizzlies got enough. If you got G.G. Jackson, you got Scottie Pippen Jr., you got a shooter in Jalen Wells, you got a guy who can knock down the shots in Deke Giroux, you got Isaiah Miller coming off the bench pressuring. Then you got other guys. Timmy Allen was on a 10-day contract with the Grizzlies. Drew Primer has had solid stretches of play. He didn't do much in this game, but in the last game, he had a stretch where he made back-to-back 3-pointers. So you got some players that have made impacts. And with all that being said, it's going to come down to Scottie Pippen Jr. and G.G. Jackson just leading the way. Trey Jemison's going to be solid. I think they have enough to win it. Do I think they will win it? That's to be determined. Depends on who they end up playing and all that good stuff. But they have enough to be a factor. The Grizzlies will be a factor just because, Zach Edey, Jake LaRavia, and all these guys, Cam Spencer are probably going to be out. It doesn't make me think, they're doomed. They're not doomed. Scottie Pippen Jr. is still out there. Gigi Jackson's still out there. They have a chance against anybody as long as those two guys are suiting them up, as well as Trey Jemison in the front court and some of the players that we just mentioned. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. Remember that you can listen to Locked On Grizzlies pretty much any and everywhere. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, Locked On Grizzlies is there. And also, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me today. On the next show, it's going to be Joe Mullinax with you on Monday, likely recapping whatever happens with the Grizzlies over the weekend. I'm not sure which day they're going to be playing on yet. I know you guys haven't heard me say today, but I think it's going to be Sunday because there are a lot of other games scheduled for Saturday, and maybe they just bump the Grizzlies and the two semifinal games up to primetime Saturday because the championship game is definitely going to be on Monday. So I don't know if there's going to be a back-to-back situation or they're going to play it Saturday or Sunday, but we'll find out. Follow my coverage at thecommercialappeal.com because that's where you also find out when the Grizzlies will play as well. But Joe Mullinax will be with you on the next show, breaking down whatever happens in that game. I'll be back with you the following day after that. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.